Yeah, tell her please call me. I am ready. And good morning, everyone. I'm Don Zavis, National Sales Trainer, Sales Coach. Bedeckled is the man in black today. I'm channeling Johnny Cash. So, Mr. Cash from the afterlife, thank you for a lifetime of great music. It's going to be our continuing series. We're talking about alternative sales approaches, and I apologize because we're working on the technology behind us. David's going to be joining us here momentarily. But if you joined us for last session, we really appreciate that. You know, I always like to open the session saying, I understand there's a lot of things that are vying for your time, especially now in today's very technology-heavy world. There's a lot going on out there, and at the very least, we want to make sure that we provide you some great content and stuff. I see our partner in crime walking up as we speak. So, David, what we'll do is we'll kind of weave you into the ongoing session. So we talk about alternate selling approaches, and the idea of alternate selling approaches is most people have a very set idea of what sales looks like, and there's kind of a process that they go to. We do an entire session on the sales process, but it kind of sounds something like this. You meet somebody for the first time. You get a sense that you might be able to do something together. They ask you for a quote or some kind of something, and you give it to them, and then you've got this kind of dance that goes back and forth. And that's kind of the standard way most sales is done. Now, it becomes very elusive because occasionally you actually make a sale in that program. So the general consensus is, well, I made a sale, therefore this must be a good way to do it. Alternative selling approaches talks about things that are different to what you would normally do. So for those that are taking notes, that are joining us either electronically, thank you, or even the group that we have here, write this down. I don't want you to sound or act like anybody else. I don't want you to sound like anybody else. I don't want you to act. You can stay, David, stay up here. Up here. Just jump into the session as you have time. Make sure does he got a mic for him? Oh, he's got it. Okay. Well, I'm going to keep going. So, and because people make sales under these circumstances, the perception is this is the way to do it. So we talked about some alternative selling approaches when we did our session 2 weeks ago. We talked about the first idea of kind of a self-select. We talked about sales by verdict, where you're creating the selling process so that the salesperson's yes is the yes. And the examples that we used was like a mortgage company. You go to a mortgage company, they give you all the information, they sit with bated breath, and then the hope is that the mortgage company can get you approved. So it's the mortgage company's yes, the salesperson's yes, which is the yes. It's not yours. And the example that I use is I've never seen anyone ever involved in a mortgage application where they got approved for the mortgage, and then they came back and said, nah, I'm just checking. Nah, no, we got to bring us in. Yeah, no, I'm just checking. I don't really want it. Have you ever had that experience?
No, of course not.
Yeah, of course not. Same thing with financing a car. So there are industries already that have that sales by verdict built in as part of their process, where the salesperson's yes is ultimately the yes. And we talked about and went into detail about how we want to change your overall outlook, your overall sales approach, so that as a salesperson, your yes is the yes. We also talked about self-select. And self-select was the mechanism that we use to allow the client to communicate, or prospect in this case, the prospect to communicate to us kind of where they are in the process, right? And we give them different options. And the example that we use is in the early 80s when you started to see the menus start to pop up on a lot of the phone systems for the major retailers. Instead of just having a 1-800 number, everybody called in, and if, God forbid, you needed to buy socks the second week of December, you're going to be on hold for 30 minutes while all of the Christmas people are in front of you. And then they realize, wait a second, for the guy that just wants to buy socks, why don't we give him a special button to push? Because he doesn't care if he gets it for Christmas. He just wants to buy socks. And then if you wanted to buy something for Christmas, you needed it shipped faster, you'd push a separate button, again, self-select, and then they would direct you to somebody who'd be able to get that immediately. So that self-select now became an additional alternative selling approach, where in our industry and in our business, we routinely give the client to make a decision, give them the option to make a decision. Some people want to get started right away, and we want to be able to have that as an option. Much the same way other people may want to start sometime in the future. Maybe they have budgets. We're coming towards the end of the year. And they may not have physical dollars in their budgets until January. So we give them the opportunity to kind of self-select. They're going to tell us, oh, this is where I am. I need to do it right away, or I don't need to do it right away. The approach that we want to talk about today, and if you want, I know you were going to do your session in the morning. If you've got content you want to just kind of throw in this as well, that would be cool. Okay. The first part is what we call the negative sell. So, and I know that sounds a lot more ominous than it is legitimately. But there's a selling protocol that we follow that says, if I do everything that I possibly can do to get you to say no, and despite my best efforts, you still don't say no, I might have something. Now, that's very different from what most people think, because when you think of the negative sell, most people, it's like, why in the world would you ever say anything negative? So when I say negative sell, let me give you some examples. Now, most people would never say they're expensive. They would never say that. What salesperson is going to say, oh, we're very expensive? The problem? Absolutely, sure. Do you think Tiffany's is struggling with that idea? No, absolutely not. Porsche, the same way. Luxury hotels, you know, anything like that. They're going in the opposite direction. They're not saying we're the. Put it this way: go to the Porsche dealership. Look at the new 911 SC for 2024. It's about $141,000. And say, listen, I was over at the Ford dealership, and I can get an $1,800 rebate on a Fiesta. Right? What do you think the Porsche dealer is going to say? To be like, do me a favor, can you help Mr. Zavis to the door, please? Right? So the idea of the negative sell is I want you to go in the direction opposite of what everybody else does. So if I'm talking to somebody and I know money's going to be an issue right in the beginning, I'm going to bring it out. Listen, Jim, I'd love to have you as my client, but I got to tell you right now, if we do it, you're probably looking at better than $5,000. Should we keep talking? Now, and perfect. So what has he now done that benefits me? He said no, even in role play. What he said no in role play. Exactly. Why? Because if I'm not going to make a sale, when do I want to find out? As soon as possible. Exactly. And if your offering is $100, you want to tell them. If it requires 5 hours a day of doing something, when do you want to tell them? Right up front. So I want you to go in the opposite direction of everybody else. And you want to be able to communicate very early in the game. Again, if I'm not going to make a sale, when do I want to find out? And the answer should be immediately. We all have these deal breaker kinds of questions that we need to know. Do you have an incumbent? Who are you working with right now? Are you happy with the relationship? There's all the language that we build in that goes along with it. But the idea of a negative sell is going in the opposite direction of wherever they think they should be going. Because again, most people are, well, Mr. Jones, if you do business with us, it'll be great and the sun will always shine and the wind will always blow warm. And that's not the case. You're going to go in the negative, you're going in the opposite direction. You know, I'd love to take you as my client, but I don't know if we're a fit. Can I ask you some questions? Now, what salesperson in their right mind would ever say to a prospect, you know, I don't know if I want you as a client? That goes in the opposite direction, but if you listen, understand human dynamics, as you come towards someone, right, what's their natural, and when I say towards, either physically, on the phone, whatever, as you go towards someone, what's their natural inclination?
Step back.
Exactly. But if I step back, what's their natural inclination? Come forward. So if I go towards you, your natural inclination is to come back, right? Is to step back. But if I step back, your natural inclination is to come forward. I use a very, and I'm not saying that your prospects are animals, but if you look at a dog as a great horse, great representation. If you go towards a dog, most dogs, especially if they don't know you, what will they do? Right? They'll either freeze or they'll back up. They don't know you, they don't know your intentions, anything like that. Right. But if you step back or you just sit down, the dog will do what? 90% of the time, they'll come towards you. They see that you're not a threat. Right. So when you think about that, so David, when you think about the idea that if I'm not going to make a sale, when do I want to find out? There's probably lots of questions that we would want to ask them very early in the game. Mm-hmm. Any particular ones come to mind?
Yeah, like, you know, sort of get a sense of consequence questions, maybe.
I'll take a consequence question, sure.
You know, like if this, you know, if you didn't get help at this moment, what would occur to your business?
Absolutely.
What would happen to your bottom line?
Yeah, Bob, if we figure out that we're not able to do business together, what's your next step? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, Bob doesn't have a next step. You're the lifeline that he's hoping for. Right. So the idea of a negative sell, again, is going in the opposite direction of what they're used to. They're used to hearing from every salesperson, come do business with me, it'll be great, the sun will be shining, everything will be wonderful. And that breeds a defensive posture. When you go in the opposite direction, say, listen, Bob, I'd love to talk to you, but I got to tell you right up front, my training's expensive. Now, there's language that we're going to come into the conversation with that will help you diffuse those particular words. But ultimately, the idea is that you have to be able to identify what your negative selling thing is. So what would be some of the, and Cody, I'll pick you just because you and I already work together. What would be some of the, if you're talking to somebody, what might they say? What would be some of their apprehensions, right? The things that you want to know very early in the game. Okay. Right. Right. Okay. I'll take all of those. Perfect. Let's go with all those right off the bat. Bob, no, really, because that's real life, right? Well, you all have a version of that. There's nobody in this room has not at least one of those. Bob, I got to tell you right up front, I'd love to have you as a client, but when we get together over lunch, we're going to make a $100,000 decision. Are you okay with that? Now, one of two things is going to happen. He's either going to say yes or no. Now, if your minimum that you have for investable assets that you represent a client is $100,000, when do you want to cover that? After you've wasted 6 meetings? Right. You probably want to get it out right in the beginning. Mm-hmm. Bob, if we get together and we decide to work together, here's the stuff that I'm going to need for the next meeting. And you tell him right up front. Bob, if we get together, you're probably going to have to invest 3 hours a week for the next month. Are you okay with that? Again, now most people never talk about the challenges. In fact, they're fearful talking to prospects or customers about something they think is going to hurt their sale. Like, well, I don't want to talk about money because he may not like me. Well, okay, then do it your way. But if you have your minimums, if you know what it looks like to do business with you, it'd be like being a personal trainer that doesn't communicate up front what requirements the clients are going to do for their time and their physiology in order to be successful. Mm-hmm. You don't want to wait until you've met with them 15 different times to say, oh, by the way, you're going to have to commit to 2 hours a day. To have Bob say, oh, I don't have 2 hours a day. Again, if I'm not going to make a sale, when do I want to find out? So here's the exercise. Here's your homework. What I suggest for everyone is just get a regular legal pad, right? Standard legal pad. I want you to write 1 through 20 down the left margin. 1 through 20. On each line, I want you to write something that is a deal breaker for your sale. Now, everybody's is going to be different, and I'm not saying you've got to get all 20 at one time. But you want to be able to have a living document. You want to add things to this document as they come up. So, Jim, what would be something that somebody would say to you? What would be a deal breaker for you?
Laugh.
If I can laugh as much as you want.
Yeah.
So, fine. So I'm going to encourage you to say that right up front.
Right.
If we get together, because part of my therapy is laughter therapy, I need for you to feel comfortable that you're going to be in that mind space. You're going to be jovial, you're going to be excited, you're going to be committed, right? You're going to be disciplined enough to do it, and you're probably going to have to do it for an hour a day. Well, it's okay. I'm for illustration, an hour. Are you okay with that? So the idea of the negative sell, we're not actually selling negatively. What we're doing is we're introducing into the conversation the things that are ultimately going to have a deleterious effect on our sale. Right in the beginning, if it's an incumbent, right? And most of the people you work with, Kiki, likely are already working with somebody. Well, you might want to say, look, I'd be happy to do business together, but what about Bob? Right? You've been working with Bob for 10 years. What's going on? Right? Most people don't want to talk about the incumbent. They want to shower you with the stuff about them. Again, you can't blow smoke at someone enough to have them come. Before they can marry us, they have to psychologically divorce the existing relationship. And by the way, the existing relationship might be nothing. There may be no incumbent. They may never have worked with a financial guy in the world, right? They figured, I'm smart enough to make the money. I'm smart enough to be able to handle the money. So your incumbent in a lot of cases might be nobody. It might be nobody and it might be nothing. But you have to be able to get through that. Again, before they can marry us, they have to psychologically divorce whatever it is they're doing. Maybe they've never had therapy right in the beginning. So, Bob, you shared with me you've never had therapy. Is that going to be a deal breaker for us? Because you've lived 57 years and never had it before. You might be convinced you're going to live another 57 and never need it. So, again, the idea of a negative sell is I'm going to introduce very early in the game the things that are going to have a negative effect on our relationship. We're going to go in the opposite direction of whatever they think. Because if I sound like everyone else, give you the example. If I took your brochure, I scraped off your name, your information, your stuff like that, and I wrote your biggest competitor's name on there, it's likely they say all the same things, right? Everybody says what? Great service, lowest price, best response time. Well, here's the reality. Only one person can get best service, right? Only one person is going to have the lowest price. So if you sound like them, well, you might as well go to the cheapest guy because you're all saying the same thing. That's the part that wants to be different. You have to have your unique value proposition. John, if you want to jump up anytime,
Can't you tell?
I can tell. So the idea ultimately is you want to go in the opposite direction of wherever they think they're going to go. Next, back in the 80s, they came out with a concept called spin selling. And it's interesting that in our industry, about every 10 years, you get a new selling methodology. There's some new guru that finds its way in the world. And along with that guru comes a lot of new language, right? I remember in the 80s, the word was paradigm shift, right? Everybody had to, if your stuff didn't have the word paradigm shift in, you were meaningless. I mean, you sucked, right? Back in Detroit, because coming from Detroit, right? ISO 9000. There was a period of time in the 80s and early 90s that if you were not ISO 9000 certified, no big three would do business with you. None of you. And what it was a quality program. The ISO 9000 people would come in and they would evaluate every aspect of your business. And the perception was if you ran as absolutely lean, absolutely quality driven as possible, by de facto, you'd be able to provide a better product to the big three. Which really made sense, right? It really made sense. The reality is most of these guys just bribed their way into getting the certification and really didn't do anything different. When was the last time you heard ISO 9000 being important now or in the last 10 years? Nobody. But back in the 80s, you had to have it, right? If you didn't have it, you didn't exist in the world. Spin selling was one of those, but it was one that I believe is sticky because I liked the concept. I thought the concept was good because most people that aren't in sales don't understand this, all of the aspects and all the corners and rabbit holes you can go down. And they came up with 4 very simple things related to that in an anachronistic type of way. So let's go with the first one. First one is situation. Situation. By the way, this is their problem. Always consider that because most people have this differentiation between empathy and sympathy. Does anybody not know the difference? All right, well, for the camera, I'm going to go ahead and tell you. All right, the difference between empathy and sympathy is that when you are empathetic, you take the client's problems or the prospect problems on as if they were your own. You legitimately and tactily feel their pain, right? Their sorrow, their things. And by the way, I'm not saying that that's not good. I'm not making a value judgment. I'm saying it, right? You actually take the problem. And you'll see a lot of times I'll work with like a lot of auto dealerships. And I'll work with their salespeople. And the salesperson will run in their manager's office and say, listen, yeah, you want to finish it? Yeah, listen, if we could drop the price $3,000, they'll buy it. And I'm thinking, who the hell are you trying to sell? Your boss to go down the price? Why aren't you out there telling them why it's worth $3,000 more? They're taking your financial problem on their shoulders if it's their problem. Sympathy is different. Sympathy, I feel bad for them, right? But I'm glad it's happening to them. I feel bad for you, but I'm glad it's you and not me. I don't take your issues and your problems on myself. So the situation that these people is in is their problem. We are problem solvers looking for problems to solve. If they don't have a problem or we don't help them identify a problem, there's a very good chance we're not going to make a sale. Somebody who doesn't have enough money at retirement. Whose problem is that? Right? Exactly. You're a young man. You got a hell of a long way to go before it becomes an issue for you, right? But do I care if they eat cat food? No. No, not at all. Now, I know people are like, oh, Dad, that's so mean. How can you call yourself a Catholic? Very easily, right? I can't want it more than you do, right? My God said, hey, listen, do nothing and I'll just take care of everything, right? No, my God said, get out there and kick ass. I gave you skills. Go use them. So that's the thing, and most people do everything that they can to take the problem away. I don't want you to do that. I don't want you to be mean about it. So, Bob, what happens when you find you're 62 years old and don't have any money? And shut up. Shut up. Put them right in that spot. Grab them. You grab them. Imagine this. I'm holding you by the scruff of the neck, and I'm holding you looking down at the abyss. It's their problem. It's not my problem. And if you leave potentially the solution, they still have their problem. Fire away, sure. And jump into this too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, look at the people that said that they said yes, they would have a financial hardship for a $400 unexpected expense. The vast majority of people have less than $1,000 in savings. But again, the way I look at it is this is their problem. And here's what I'm going to say. We talk about negatives, go back to the negative selling, right? And I'm going to say, well, yeah, but that's not a problem. I'm sure your daughter and son-in-law will be happy if you live with them. What are they thinking in their mind? Oh, no, they wouldn't. Right? I'm going in the opposite direction. I'm not telling them, here's the problems as a result of the fact you haven't planned. I'm going the opposite direction and saying, yeah, but I'm sure your kids would never let you live in an old folks home or something like that. And what are they thinking? Holy shit, I can't get my kids to call me, let alone take me in. That's the opposite direction of what they're going. I'm not painting a negative picture. I'm now creating a positive picture they know not to be true. So the first thing is situation. It's their problem, right? It is their problem. I can't want the solution to their problem more than they do. Because if I try to push them into a solution, if I want the solution more than they do, they're going to feel this. If I'm like, listen, when you're ready to stop, if you don't want any more sleepless nights, you want to make more money, call me. I'll help you, right? But I can't want it more than you.
I'm a salesperson.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a problem with not for me. Lose that sale. Girls, how do you stop yourself from stopping?
You're right. And we do an entire session on that, but I'm going to answer your question. Inadequate prospecting. Inadequate prospecting. So let me give you an example. If you had in this hand, right, 30 people who loved you, appreciated you, respected you, paid you on time, gave you referrals, everything under the sun in this hand, wouldn't you be a little bit more selective about who you do business, right? If there was a dozen handsome guys that wanted to date you, do you think your scale would go up or down? It would go up, of course, right? It'd be like if you had 20 people in line to give you $1 million job, right? If you were Tom Cruise, do you think you're going to be a little bit selective in how you do business, right? What jobs you do, what you get hired for? right? But when you're a brand new actor struggling, you'll take a hemorrhoid commercial. That's the problem, inadequate prospecting. Most people have nothing but the low-hanging fruit. They take everybody because that's all they have. But if you have your choice of these people that pay you, love you, fall over backwards to give you referrals, and these people that are a pain in the ass, what are you going to pick? Well, of course you're going to pick this. And yet most people don't fight to get this. This is hard. This costs money. This takes effort. This requires you to go to networking events and do prospecting and what else? Do social media and be out in the world and do digital media. That's all hard. That's expensive, Don.
Or actually take the time to build long-lasting relationships. Not ask for the sale early, right? But just actually build a real relationship with people that can that goes past the initial phase.
Yeah.
People don't want to do that.
And a lot of people, it's very hard. Again, you go that empathy, sympathy. They take the problems of their people in front of them on themselves. Well, they don't have any money, Don. Maybe we can do this. I'm like, no, that's stupid, right? You can't discount your way to prosperity. When did that ever work? Right? The situation is, again, now, I'm not saying this is for everybody, but I'm telling you, as you get more success in your world, you'll eventually get there. We all get there, and almost the exact same thing and the exact same response. I don't care if you're poor. I don't care if you're miserable. I don't care if you're unhappy. It doesn't make any difference. It's your God-given right to be all of those things. It's your God-given right to be stupid. When you're unhappy enough that you want to do something, call me. But I don't care if you live your, again, it sounds horribly mean. And I know people are going to respond and send me emails and say hateful crap on it. But I can't want your success more than you. I can't want your successful financial retirement more than you.
Right.
I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Or your successful nonprofit or whatever. All right, next thing is the problem. But again, it's their problem. Not your problem. It's their problem. Why? Because Cody's a smart guy. He's putting away a sufficient amount of money early in his life, so he doesn't have these crises at 62. He gets up early in the morning. He contacts a lot of people. He goes to networking groups. He has a good CRM. He has a robust social media presence. He does videos. He does all the things that he should be doing. And not surprisingly, as a result of that, he becomes successful. In a world where most people do everything they can to keep themselves a secret. Literally, don't look at me. Don't look at me. I don't want to tell you my business. I'm going to come to a networking event. I'm not going to bring any business cards. Not going to talk to anybody. Not going to take a goodie bag. I'm never going to volunteer for Member Focus, God forbid, for the expo table. Right? I'm going to sit here, talk to nobody, and as soon as 10:01 finishes, I'm going to shoot out that door like they're releasing toxic gas in the room. And that's the same person that says, nah, I tried networking, it didn't work. Again, it's their problem. Tell them it's their problem. Bob, I will tell you in the first 30 seconds, your financial success is up to you. I will help you if you help yourself, period. If you're not going to help yourself, I'm not going to call you 97 times. I'm not going to chase you. I'm not going to beg you for crap. I'm going to call you once. If you don't respond back, I'm going to drop you like a hot potato. Why? Because I can't want it more than you. And we all have a version of that. Every industry that we have our version of want it more than them. Because that's when they feel pressure. When you call them and nag them and pest them and call them, that's when they feel the pressure. So even though they might be particularly interested, they're thinking about working with you and they're neutral, right? Maybe tilting even a little bit to the positive. And then you start to call them and you start to text them and email them and everything else. And they were positive, but now they see you as being a pest. And even though it was a little positive, it goes to neutral. And eventually now you're a pest and it goes to zero. Even though they could greatly benefit from what you do. But I can't want it. That's why the situation is critical. The problem is critical, but it's their problem, right? You're talking to a school, and they have a mediocre after-school program. Their funding is getting cut. Nobody wants to come. The programs are for crap. Who do you think gets in trouble? Who do you think loses their job when the after-school programs are ill-attended and crappy and not effectual? You think somebody... Now, here's what I'd say. If I was talking to an administrator at a school, I'd say, yeah, but you know what? It's not like you're going to lose your job if your after-school program is crappy. Well, what are they thinking? Maybe, sure, if enough parents complain, right? My boss gets sick of it. Eventually, the crap rolls downhill and it rolls on my lap. Now, that's a negative sell. Well, I'm not saying, oh, you're going to get fired if you don't have a good program. What'd I just say? Well, it's not like you're going to get fired if you don't have a really good after-school program. But what are they thinking? It's the opposite direction of whatever they're thinking. You want to chime in?
Yeah, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the psychology comes into when we're able to recognize and bring up some of these consequences in people's mind, people are actually able to see the true impact of what it actually means to them, right? Most people don't even fully recognize their pain points until it's brought up. And now you get them to start to discuss it openly, right? They say people respond to potential losses way more than to their gains, right? So learning to bring that up, consequences, you're able to tap into emotions and their motivations, and you actually encourage your clients to reflect on their situation. The willingness to bring up the things early, these are the things that they're thinking about anyway. But Don's bringing up, stop being scared of bringing up the things that they're thinking of. But when you actually bring up the negative thoughts that people have, you're actually satisfying that urge inside, because that actually shows you are an expert. Because you're the expert. You're supposed to figure out my problems. And if I didn't bring up the problems and you brought up the problems first, you're now starting to feel, you actually get a sense of being satisfied internally as the customer. Yes. And so that's your job, is to satisfy them in that way, putting yourself in the position to be the expert and bringing that out of them.
I love that. Absolutely. We call it implication. The I in spin is implication. And if you think of it like this, most people don't like to think about things that are distasteful. They don't like to think about their failures, their weaknesses, the trials and tribulations they have. I, on the other hand, am more than willing to remind them. Now, I'm not saying you have to, but I'm telling you, eventually you will skew in this direction, because every successful salesperson skews in this direction because it's an understanding of human dynamics. So if I'm talking to somebody, I'm going to say, yeah, but when you tell the wife that you can't go to Disney World again this year, it's not like she's going to, want to hang you. What do you think? Maybe she's going to be pretty upset, right? When you aren't able to do all the things that you want to do, it's the implications of your lack of action. So, Bob, when you sat down and talked to your wife and said, listen, those golden years are going to be pretty rusty, I'm sure she was okay with that, right? Now, that seems like a dick thing to say, right? But in the moment, it's two guys talking honestly, one-to-one. That's how friends talk. I'm not going to, when I leave, you still have the problem, and I'm more than happy to let you have it, right? I'm going back to my perfect life. I don't care if yours is miserable. I can't want it more than you do. So the implications of their situation, their problems, their lack of activity, everybody has a version. Bob, if you don't get therapy, where do you think you're going to be in 90 days? Now, by the way, when you're empathetic, you feel the need to make sure that doesn't happen. When you're sympathetic, right, you feel bad, but I can't help you unless you're my client. Unless you contract one of the three of us, I can't help you improve your sales. I can't help you do anything, right? I have no influence over you unless you hire me. Kiki can't get you a better deal on your insurance unless you give her a chance. We all have a version of whatever that is in our world, and yet most people feel the need to chase you. And, if somebody wants to pay more for their insurance, well, God bless them. Right? Kiki's found my stuff, saved me a ton of money, and get me a better policy. Why? Because I say yes to everything. Doesn't mean that I buy everything. I say yes to everything. Why? Because somebody might have a better mousetrap, especially for something I already have. So you've got situation, you've got the problem, you've got the implementation.
Technique be brutally.
No, blow smoke at them. No, of course. I mean, I'm being facetious, right? The idea is you can't blow smoke at people and have it be anything. It's the emperor's new clothes. If you ever, I actually, in one of the slides that I have for this, it's an example of the emperor's new clothes. And there's all too many times where people get in front of people and show them the rosy outlook that's never going to come. It's never. It's like, you know, every time I work with a financial services person that has that works with the senior community, any marketing piece has got to have smiling old people. It does. It has to have smiling old people, right? Preferably smiling old people with grandkids. Now, the vast majority of those in their 60s and 70s have health issues. They're not going to be running on the beach. Most never see their grandkids for any one of a variety of reasons, right? You factor in divorce and health and all the other stuff, so the picture you're showing is unlikely to be legitimate, but it's the ideal that people go to. That's why that you know, the implication of whatever you do, you've got to help them. Again, and I'm not saying in a mean way, but you've got to bring them to the abyss. They have to understand that any substantive change is what they have to do. Rarely is the application of nothing change the trajectory of anything. And all too many times we feel the need empathetically that, well, I have to get them a better deal on their insurance. No, you don't. They have to want a better deal on their insurance, right? And then you need to have a payoff, right? This is your needs payoff. This is your payoff right here. Your needs payoff. The idea is if you recognize your situation, you understand your problem, you understand the implications of you doing nothing, then your ability to change, which is the needs payoff that comes at the end. Bob, if you do this, you know, Bob, if you give me an opportunity, it's possible that I can't do better, right? But there's a 50% chance that I can do better. Now think about that. Most people gamble. Would you know, go to any casino? Your odds are less than that, and people throw away money all the time, and yet most people don't do that. They're unwilling to engage with someone else. That's why when you look at alternative forms of sales, it isn't the normal, hi, Mr. Jones, yeah, tell me what you want, I'll give you a quote, and then I'll hope and pray that something's going to happen. You want to jump in?
You know what I'm thinking? When you asked your question, I'm thinking about maybe some other questions that are out there because of what you just said. I say think of things in the nature that most of the times, by the time you reach the end of your presentation, how many times have you heard, you know what, this just sounds good, I'll give you a call back. Right. You know what, maybe this sounds good, but let me think about it. Right. Or you know what, I'll go somewhere else. And that's because a lot of times that we didn't build enough urgency or build enough, the situation enough for them to see their own situations, see the problem that it's actually real, and you got them to marinate in their head. What are the implications of the problem of nothing happening because of it? Most of the time, those questions are not being brought up, and they're not being talked about or discussed. So the customer doesn't think about it themselves. So through this process, what we're able to do is uncover that, and what you're going to do is you're going to reduce the amount of people who at the end are going to give you those type of excuses because you've got them to the point where, you know what, you've made me realize the impact of what me not doing anything and what actually can happen if I do work with you. And so you're going to be able to reduce the actionability of those type of rebuttals at the end.
Absolutely. So, so when you think of alternative forms of selling, most people, again, have this very clinical, almost organic, I meet somebody, I give them a quote, I wait by the phone, hopefully something happens. None of these are in that scenario. The next one is we call opportunity selling. I'll go one step further and explain it in a different way, which is called sidewalk prospecting. But opportunity selling is your ability to catch people in a situation that you can solve. So, for example, Kiki sells auto insurance. Do you sell any auto insurance that has no deductible in a collision situation? So if I went out in the parking lot today and I saw a car that had a dent on it, I would slip your business card in the visor, and I would say, if you had a no deductible collision policy with me, it wouldn't cost you 1 penny to fix this dent. Now think about that, right? Cody goes out in the same parking lot. He looks for the Land Rovers, the Porsches, the Jaguars, the Cadillacs, what else? And he puts his business, Ferraris, he puts his business card underneath the, and you know what it says? You're the kind of person that I make money for. That's it. Because the guy that's driving the Porsche is willing to take a chance. That's why if you watch Shark Tank, why would Mark Cuban, he's got $10 billion. Why would he want to listen to this dumbass? Well, because you never know if this dumbass might have the next $10 billion idea. Wealthy people are always willing to give a small portion of their time to listen to you. I learned the idea of I say yes to everything from the second richest guy I know. I didn't make that. I stole it. I only steal from the very best. But he said yes to everything. Doesn't mean he bought everything, but he wants to know about everything. So when he goes out and he puts his business card in the Jags, the Porsches, the Ferraris, the Cadillacs, the Lincolns, whatever, and says, you're the kind of person I make more money for. When he gets a call, do you think the people have money? What if, and I have nothing against Hyundais and Kias and whatever, but that's who he wants, right? For me, my sidewalk prospecting, my opportunity selling is a tie. If you have a tie on and I see you have a tie on, I will find a way to engage you in conversation. Why? Because you're on my team, right? I'm the tie people. Now, Tucson is kind of a weird bird because there's a lot of people that clearly don't wear ties that might be tie people to me. But the idea is we all have a version of that. The thing is, like in your case, if you see a car seat, kids' toys, a sign in the back says, I love my son's soccer team. That would be the person that would get the business card shoved underneath the window, the fly or something, right? If you dealt with people who, she does Medicare, you do Medicare, right? Her trigger might be anybody with a cane and a wheelchair. Right? Why? Because they know they're in a, they know, put it this way, they're not, when you walk up to them and say, they're not going to go, oh my God, I'm in a wheelchair. Right? Trust me, they know it. Right? They already realize that. Opportunity selling is for you to identify the people that present themselves in the world with exactly what you want. And yet we walk by the Porsches. We walk by the Cadillacs. Right? We walk by the cars with dents in it. Why do people have dents in crappy cars? Because they can't afford to get the dents out because they probably got a $2,000 deductible. Right? When you tell them if you had a policy with me, it would have been a zero deductible policy. This would have been fixed already. Cracked windshields, all the things that go along with it. We know what we fix. We know how the people are. Opportunity selling says if you're going to prospect and you can only make one contact, if you don't know the best representation of that contact, you will struggle. Struggle, struggle. You don't need to put out 50 business cards on cars. You want to put the 50 business cards on the kinds of cars that generate the type of business that you ultimately want. And we all have a version of that, whatever it is. We all know what our atypical most desired prospect is. And we also know where they are. Right? So you like outdoors, right? You like firearms, as I do. Well, there's a much better chance that if you're trying to get my attention, do it in Guns and Ammo. Don't do it in Ladies' Home Journal. I'm not going to see it. And yet most people don't have that. They don't understand what their atypical client is, which, by the way, is presented every single day. These people show up in front of you every single day. You just want to make it easy for them to show up. Does anybody not know who their atypical client is before I get off of this? Does everybody know what they look like on the street? If you don't, reach out to us. Well, there's a process that we go through of questions that will help you find that out. But every person that you want demonstrates what they are and who they are in some outward fashion. You just have to be aware of it. Again, for me, it's a tie, right? For you, it might be a nice car. All right, for anyone else, there might be other things we look at, maybe dents or cracked windshields.
I was thinking about for Kiki, like, people who, newborns in a stroller. Anyone with a new baby, guess what? They should probably know about life insurance for their child.
Yeah, right? Absolutely, sure. Sidewalk prospecting is the language that we talk to about opportunity selling. But the idea is each one of us has some version of that that's always presenting itself, and yet they just neglect and they just idly walk by, and they never take advantage of that which is right in front of them. And then they wonder why they don't get anything. Again, they're doing everything they can to have themselves a secret. They carry no business cards with them. They carry no flyers. They carry no marketing pieces. They don't have that built-in next step. Let me keep going. I want to make sure we do it. So opportunity selling. So everybody, because everybody kind of understand that's a much more conceptual. But again, if you don't know, I have one guy who looks for your watch, right? If it's an expensive watch, then he's going to talk to you, right? And I'm not making a value judgment about your worth or anything like that. Makes no difference. I have another client of mine, Aaron Moss, who's right here in Tucson. He comes to our sessions. You may know him. He does computer networking. His trigger is if he sees 3 or more computers in one place. He will ask him about networking. Who does your computer network? Because really what he does needs more than 3 computers to be valuable. So he doesn't worry about prospecting. He does very little social media. When he's out in the world, he asks him, and interestingly enough, probably 1 out of every 5 or 10, and he says he does that, they'll say, well, yeah, we got a problem. Can you look at it? And there are times, literally, he makes money on day 1. They say, I got a problem. We can't make this printer work. Can you look at it? He's like, sure, it's $200 an hour. Right? They're like, yeah, go ahead, fine. If you can make it work, that's fine. Which would have never happened unless he understood the opportunity value. Think of it as sidewalk prospecting. That's probably the better language that people use. You want something that you visually see that will trigger you into going into a selling mode, into going into a selling conversation. And it's something, again, that these prospects will outwardly identify for you. Okay? Good. You want to jump in?
Yeah, I just want to say, you know, like when we're talking about negative sell, putting people in these situations, you also have to have the actual questions to ask, right? And so sometimes you're like, well, maybe what questions, maybe I don't know what to ask. A good formula, easy one, is just think about who.
Oh, yeah. What, where, when, yeah.
What.
Perfect.
Where, who, what, where, how.
Yes.
And why.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay? So you know that whatever business you're in, whatever situation, who is going to be affected by this? What other aspects in your business are going to be affected if this doesn't happen, or I don't help you? Where in your business is really losing? Where is this? How much money are you going to lose if nothing happens today? How much do you stand to gain? Okay? Why are you actually here today? Why haven't you gotten help before?
Yes.
Why haven't you done things before?
Love that.
Right? So just once again, our job is to help you, give you tools. This thing may be easier way. I don't know what to do. Let's think of these, and that'll help you get there.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. So we're going to be doing some additional ones. This is the middle section of that. I do want to do some learning verification. Go around the room. What did you get? We'll start over here. Randy, what did you get from today's session? Be up front about absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, we're in the money business. We're in the money business. None of us are, none of us are charities, unless you're an actual charity. But most people need to have some revenue that comes in order to do something. But go back in the room. What'd you get?
Doing spin selling. So what I always like to back to is
absolutely.
that is the particular. I know where you are. I hear.
Yes.
I want to. I do leadership.
Absolutely.
Are you?
Yep.
Oh, I don't. Well, then the next step is.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
So that's why I do like spin selling, and it's so
it is. It is, and it's very, and again, for most people, when you give them an easy kind of an anachronistic kind of a this, and this, they can tend to remember it. Jim, what'd you get?
Talking to somebody who's stressed, pray with them. Hey, if you don't work, this is maybe what you're.
Exactly, yeah. Depression doesn't go away on its own. Again, rarely does a trajectory of anything change without the addition or implement or something. There's got to be something else involved, which is going to make it go in that direction.
But also, I would just say to you what you just said. Maybe just tweak it a little bit, and it's not about what you tell them what's going to happen.
Yes.
But you ask the question so you get them to say what will happen if nothing happens.
Absolutely.
So get them, when they talk about themselves, they're going to be like, this must be true.
Perfect. Cody, in the back, you got last word. What'd you get from today? Well, you know what? At this point in time, I will tell people, if you feel it, say it. Don't be argumentative, don't be combative, but if you feel it, say it. I've never seen a scenario that moved forward by you making overt promises. There is no emperor's new clothes. This is their problem. You can't want the solution more than they do. So anyways, thank you, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get the cameras off, get everything, and we're going to be starting back again at 5 minutes after 9. So thank you so much, and we are going to be ready to go.